Hello and welcome to some Dodge Family History. This is where I present information and research on my ancestors who served in the military during the early 20th century. Today, I will be presenting on the reconstructed military file of David Nemetzky. It has been some time since my last presentation. I have recently returned from the National Archives in Washington, D.C., and have found several different record series that have helped to reconstruct his military file. Even though most of these records cover the early years of his military service, from 1904 to 1912, some of the available records there cover his military service through World War I. Before I start on the various records series that I found at the National Archives in Washington, D.C. for David Nemetzky, I want to start by going over the reconstructed military file that I found for him at the National Archives in St. Louis, as well as other available records that are now online. His reconstructed file, or R file, contains his final payment statements from 1922, 1924, 1927, 1930, and 1931, as well as carded medical records that show medical treatment he received while stationed at Letterman General Hospital. There is also a burn file or B file list at the National Archives in St. Louis to indicate which Army official military personnel files, or 201 files, have been recovered from the 1973 fire. David Nemetzky's is not one of those files on the B file list, unfortunately. Now, in addition to his reconstructed file, there are additional records that are available online. Family Search has digitized and indexed the microfilm images of the bi-monthly and monthly muster rolls from the end of 1912 through the end of 1939. Fold 3 has digitized many of the microfilm images from the available morning reports for that same time period. Both of these record series are housed at the National Archives in St. Louis. In addition, Ancestry has indexed and published the available troopship manifests from that same time period. Along with his reconstructed file and available online records, I also located his enlistment and discharge record from 1914 to 1919, which is recorded with the City and County of San Francisco. Now, depending on where you live, you may or may not be able to obtain a copy of this record, depending on privacy laws in your state. With these record series now available to the public, what record series are available for research at the National Archives of Washington, D.C., and why would I take the time to research through them? David Nemetzky served in the Army from 1904 through 1931, and fortunately, not all his military records were contained solely within his 201 file. The record series that I have researched at the National Archives of Washington, D.C. to help reconstruct the early portion of his military record are as follows. Muster Rolls of Regular Army Organizations, 1784 through 1912. Enlistment Papers, 1798 through 1912. Records of the Examination of Recruits of the Regular Army, 1894 through 1912. Carded Medical Records of the Regular Army, 1894 through 1912, and a related series, Retained Medical Cards, 1907 through 1919. Court-Martial Case Files, 1894 through 1917. Document Files, 1890 through 1917. Personal Papers, 1812 through 1912. Special Orders through 1919. And Returns of the Hospital Corps, 1887 through 1911, and a related series, Hospital Muster and Payrolls, 1886 through 1912. Now, as you can see, I have included the National Archives ID number so that you can look up each of these record series on the National Archives catalog. The court-martial case files are part of Record Group 153. The special orders that were issued by posts and departments within the United States are part of Record Group 393, while those issued by posts and departments outside of the United States are part of Record Group 395. The remainder of these record series are part of Record Group 94. Now, I will go through and explain each of these record series a little more in detail, as well as the information that they provide. The first record series at the National Archives in Washington, D.C. that I researched is the Muster Rolls of Regular Army Organizations, 1784 through October 31, 1912. The muster rolls are a bi-monthly or 2-month record of each unit within the Army. The muster rolls record each soldier, alphabetically by rank, that were assigned to a specific Army unit for a specific 2-month period. Each muster roll was recorded at the end of February, April, June, August, October, and December of each year. The muster rolls also contain notes on each particular soldier, including information on their enlistment, the date they were transferred to or from that particular unit, if they were on detached service, if they were sick, if they had deserted, been court-martialed, imprisoned, promoted, or demoted, as well as when they were last paid and whether that soldier owed money to the Army. This is the image of one of the muster rolls that I found for David Nemetzky. This muster roll is for David Nemetzky when he was stationed at the hospital corps at Wali, China for July and August of 1912. As you can see, he was a private first class. He enlisted on March 30, 1911 at Jefferson Barracks, Missouri, and joined for duty on August 15, 1912 from Tientsin, China, and that he was last paid on July 31, 1912. The muster rolls are organized by unit and then by date. David Nemetzky, for example, is found in the following muster rolls: Troop A, 7th Cavalry, 1904, 99th Company, Coast Artillery, 1904 to 1906, Company B, 12th Infantry Regiment, 1907 to 1909, and the Hospital Corps, 1906 to 1907, 1909, and 1911 through 1912. For the musters of the Hospital Corps, they are organized as follows. For soldiers assigned to the Hospital Corps stateside, they are organized by state and then by date. For soldiers assigned to the Hospital Corps serving overseas, they are organized by detachment number and then by date. The detachment numbers for those in the Hospital Corps serving overseas appear to have been assigned by the Adjutant General's office upon their receipt of each muster roll. In the research room at the National Archives, there is a printed index for the muster rolls. A page of the printed index is shown here. The index lists the box number that contains the muster rolls, the regiment name, company or type of record, the beginning and ending dates for each box, and the location within the National Archives. There are nearly 2,700 boxes of muster rolls available at the National Archives in Washington, D.C. Now, the muster rolls after October 31, 1912 are indexed and available on Family Search. That series of muster rolls after October 31, 1912 was transferred to the National Archives in St. Louis following the 1973 fire. The series of muster rolls after October 31, 1912 were microfilmed, and it is these microfilmed images that are now available on Family Search. The second series of records at the National Archives in Washington, D.C. that I researched is the enlistment papers, 1798 through October 31, 1912. The enlistment papers contain the enlistment contract that each soldier signed upon their enlistment or re-enlistment. The enlistment papers list the soldier's name, age, place of birth, term of enlistment, date of previous discharge if they were re-enlisting, residence, occupation, physical description, next of kin, and citizenship status. For his first enlistment in 1904, shown here, David Nemetzky was 22 years old, born in Warsaw, Russia, was a salesman, and his father was Herman Nemetzky, who lived at 53 Suffolk Street in New York City. Each enlistment paper is also accompanied by a descriptive and assignment card. Along with the above described information, the descriptive and assignment card also indicate which unit the soldier was assigned to, whether it was infantry, cavalry, coast artillery, or hospital corps. The National Archives of Washington, D.C. has the enlistment papers and descriptive and assignment cards for David Nemetzky for his enlistments in 1904, 1907, 1908, and 1911. The enlistment papers and descriptive and assignment cards after October 31, 1912 would have been placed in his 201 file, which was lost in the 1973 fire. The next record series that I researched at the National Archives of Washington, D.C. is the records of the examination of recruits of the Regular Army, 1894 to 1912. This was a series I was very surprised to find on my recent trip. Now, this series goes hand in hand with the enlistment papers series, which we just discussed. When an individual enlisted or re-enlisted in the Army, they were given a physical examination, which took place at the same time as their enlistment. Again, this is a gem of a find, as the physical examination papers list the exact date of birth for David Nemetzky, or at least the date of birth that he provided to the Army. For his first enlistment in 1904, shown here, he lists his date of birth as April 15, 1881. His second enlistment in 1907 gives his birth date as May 15, 1881. His third and fourth enlistments in 1908 and 1911 give his birth date as August 15, 1881. The physical examinations, as shown here, go into great detail regarding his physical health, any injuries received prior to his enlistment, as well as include a physical description of the soldier. They also ask whether the soldier's parents are living, the residence and occupation of the soldier's father, the soldier's previous employment, and whether any siblings have passed away. He indicates here on his 1904 physical examination that 3 brothers had passed away, and on his 1907 and 1908 physical examinations that 1 sister had passed away. As a side note, I have not found any vital records for any of these brothers, but I have found the vital records for a baby sister, Rachel Nemetzky, who was born and died in 1894 in New York City. Now, the physical examinations after 1912 would very likely have been placed in his 201 file, which, again, was lost in the 1973 fire. The next record series that I researched at the National Archives in Washington, D.C. is the carded medical records of the regular Army, 1894 to 1912. This record series contains index cards of medical treatment received by each soldier while in the Army. This record series is organized by regiment, and then by company, and then alphabetically. However, for the hospital corps, the carded medical records are only organized alphabetically, as there are no separate companies within the hospital corps. For David Nemetzky, there are carded medical records for him in each of the following regiments: Troop A, 7th Cavalry, 99th Company, Coast Artillery, Company B, 12th Infantry Regiment, and the Hospital Corps. Shown here are one of the carded medical record cards for the Hospital Corps and a carded medical record for Company B, 12th Infantry Regiment. Each carded medical record contains the soldier's name, rank, age, time in service, date and cause of admission, time in hospital, and date of discharge from medical care. Now, there is an additional record series, Retained Medical Cards, 1907 to 1919, that I was hoping to research. I asked about that particular record series in my most recent trip to the National Archives, and I was told that this additional record series is presently closed for research as it is being digitized by the National Archives and will eventually be available online on the National Archives catalog website. At this time, there is no ETA for completion of digitization of that record series. I am hoping that that additional record series is available soon. I know that he did receive some medical treatment in the Army during the 1910s. Specifically, he was involved in an automobile accident in October of 1916 at El Paso, Texas, and was hospitalized for a few days. Additionally, as previously mentioned, there are also carded medical records available for David Nemetzky from the latter end of his military career that are included in his reconstructed military file. The next record series that I researched at the National Archives in Washington, D.C. is the Court-Martial Case Files, 1894 to 1917. In the National Archives Research Room, there is an alphabetical index of the general court-martials that took place through 1917. I found 2 general court-martial cases for David Nemetzky. The first general court-martial took place in 1904 following his desertion from the Army. The second general court-martial case took place in 1912 following his going AWOL for failure to remain on the transport ship that would have taken him to China. Both general court-martial case files contain a transcript of each general court-martial, as well as the official order carrying out the sentence. Following his court-martial in 1904, David Nemetzky was to have been dishonorably discharged from the Army and sentenced to 6 months confinement at hard labor. However, the court-martial board recommended clemency with only a 2-month sentence, which was approved. Following his 1912 court-martial, he was initially sentenced to 4 months confinement, but the sentence was reduced to 2 months. He ended up serving 1 month in confinement before being released. He also faced a third general court-martial in 1918 and was falsely accused of appropriating military property for his personal use. He was acquitted in that case. The court-martial file from 1918 is housed at the National Archives in St. Louis and was one of the records that survived the 1973 fire. The next record series that is available at the National Archives in Washington, D.C. that I researched is the Document Files, 1890 to 1917. The carded index for this series is available on Family Search as Index to General Correspondence of the Adjutant General's Office, 1890 to 1917. Each index card indicates the date of the correspondence and the file number for each document file for that particular correspondence. Now, with help from this index, I was able to locate several, but not all of the document files for David Nemetzky. This record series contains letters regarding a soldier's enlistment, transfers within the Army, promotions, and requests for discharge. The initial document file number for David Nemetzky, assigned by the Adjutant General's Office, is 902071, which is him requesting a transfer from the cavalry to the Coast Artillery following his court-martial in 1904. Several additional documents files are filed with this initial document file, including his transfer to Washington Barracks, D.C. for medical treatment in 1905, his request for transfer from the General Service Infantry to the Hospital Corps in 1914, which was approved, and a request for transfer to a station in the eastern United States in 1916, which was denied. The most interesting document file I found in this series is from September 1909, when he requested to be discharged from the Army. He requested a discharge by purchase so that he could go into the shirt manufacturing business with his brother to help support his parents and younger siblings. This request for discharge was granted, and he was discharged on September 25, 1909. The cost of his discharge was $80, which was the price a soldier had to pay for a discharge for 5 years of service. Now, as I mentioned, there were some document files that I found referenced in the index that no longer exist. The most important of these is a documentation for his promotion to sergeant in 1916. It is likely that this particular document file was placed in his 201 file and lost in the 1973 fire. The next record series that I researched at the National Archives in Washington, D.C. is the Personal Papers, 1812 to 1912. The personal papers are organized by regiment and then alphabetically. I found personal papers for David Nemetzky in the Coast Artillery and in the Hospital Corps, but I did not find any personal papers for him in the cavalry or the infantry. The personal papers for David Nemetzky from the Coast Artillery include his medical file for his hospitalization in Washington, D.C. in 1905, and include his medical chart, which details the treatment he received each day during his hospitalization. The personal papers for him in the Hospital Corps include a descriptive list and military record for him from 1909, when he was transferred to Company C Hospital Corps for detached service. It is likely that other documents that would have been part of this series were placed in this 201 file, which again was lost in the 1973 fire. The next record series that I researched at the National Archives in Washington, D.C. are the Special Orders through 1919. Special orders could be issued by posts, such as forts and camps, or they could be issued by departments and divisions, such as the Eastern Department, Western Department, Department of the Gulf, or the Philippines Division, or they could be issued by the War Department. The National Archives website explains that special orders convey instructions to individuals or small groups in such matters as the assignment or release of soldiers from duty, their transfer to other positions, assignments to special duties, and granting of leaves of absence. The National Archives in Washington, D.C. houses the special orders that were issued through 1919. Special orders issued beginning in 1920 are housed at the National Archives in College Park, Maryland. The special orders that I found at the National Archives in Washington, D.C. include the following: Department of the Gulf, 1904 to 1906, Eastern Department, 1908 to 1909, Western Department, 1914 to 1917, Philippines Division, 1912 and 1914, Fort Morgan, Alabama, 1905, Fort Porter, New York, 1907 and 1908, and Presidio of San Francisco, California, 1915 through 1918. As a side note, I found a special order for David Nemetzky in the Index of Special Orders for the Western Department for 1918. However, that specific special order no longer exists. Each special order is divided into paragraphs, with each paragraph referencing a specific soldier or set of soldiers receiving a specific assignment as outlined in that specific special order. References to many of the special orders are recorded in the bi-monthly musters, which is how I was able to find many of the special orders issued for David Nemetzky. It is important to note that not all the special orders that were issued by individual posts, forts, and camps still exist. For example, in the May-June 1908 bi-monthly muster roll for the School of Bakers and Cooks at Fort Riley, Kansas, there is reference to a special order for David Nemetzky to return to his proper station. However, the National Archives does not have any special orders for Fort Riley, Kansas in 1908, even though they have the preceding years up to 1907 and the subsequent years beginning with 1910. Some of the special orders that were issued by the War Department are presently available online. For example, the special orders issued by the War Department for David Nemetzky for the years 1905 and 1914 are available online on Internet Archive. Now, I don't know if the National Archives houses any special orders from the War Department, as there is a reference to David Nemetzky in the special orders for the War Department for the year 1911 when he was assigned to the Hospital Corps. I would like to find out if this particular series of special orders still exists, and if so, if it is housed at the National Archives in Washington, D.C. The last record series that I researched at the National Archives in Washington, D.C. are the returns of the Hospital Corps, 1887 to 1911. This record series is specifically for Army personnel who were assigned to the Hospital Corps. Now, this series is comparable to the following record series: returns of regular Army cavalry regiments, returns of regular Coast Artillery companies, returns of regular Army infantry regiments, and returns of U.S. military posts, which series are found on several online genealogy websites. This particular series, Returns of the Hospital Corps, 1887 to 1911, consists of 59 boxes of returns. The index for this series is found in the last box of this series. This series consists of Hospital Corps returns, primarily for posts abroad from the time period indicated. However, there were returns for some posts in the United States through 1918. I was able to find the monthly returns for Company C Hospital Corps in 1909, shown here, as well as bi-monthly returns for the Casual Camp of Enlisted Men, Medical Department, Camp Fort Bliss, Texas, for 1916 and 1917. Now, to be honest, I think I was the first person who had requested to go through this record series in a very long time. Each of the records were a challenge to unfold as they had been in touch for many years, as well as each of the records being very dusty. However, the records within this series are in very good condition and are worth researching. After I returned home from my most recent trip to the National Archives, I found two additional series in the National Archives catalog that I would like to go back and research. The first series is the Hospital Muster and Payrolls 1886 to 1912. This series consists of 108 boxes, and I would imagine contains additional monthly returns for the Hospital Corps. I would like to return to the National Archives and search out this series sometime in the future. The other additional series I've found on the National Archives catalog are the Alphabetical Subject Card Index to the Correspondence Section Library and the Correspondence Section Library. According to the National Archives catalog, these series cover the years 1917 to 1942. I have asked, and I'm currently waiting for a response from the National Archives, if David Nemetzky would be listed in the Subject Card Index. If so, then there would be additional records for him in each of these series, and another reason to go back. Now, there is one record series that I searched through where I did not find any additional information for David Nemetzky. It is the Descriptive Lists, 1901 to 1914. According to the National Archives catalog, this series contains descriptive lists and other records concerning the service of individual soldiers in the regular Army. The descriptive list forms include a physical description, the next of kin, a military record, and statement of accounts. Other records are sometimes filed with the descriptive lists, including descriptive and assignment cards, records of rifle firings, records of summary courts, drop cards, and other records concerning military service. Now, it is likely that this record series for David Nemetzky was placed in his 201 file and lost in the 1973 fire. I hope you have enjoyed this presentation and found it informative. There are many record series available at the National Archives in Washington, D.C. that are available to help you with the reconstruction of your ancestor's military service file. The record series I have found and researched, from muster rolls to enlistment papers, physical examinations, medical records, document files, court-martial files, and special orders, have helped me reconstruct a great portion of David Nemetzky's military service file. If you are researching your ancestor who served in the Army, especially prior to World War I hope that these record series will help you find records related to your ancestor's military service. Thank you.